You're good. You all right? You been doing pretty good?
I generally would say, oh yeah, that's good.
All that stuff you got going on here, I'd say.
It's pretty crazy.
You're good. You all right? You been doing pretty good? You're good. You all right? You been doing pretty good?
I generally would say, oh yeah, that's good.
All that stuff you got going on here, I'd say. What you read, what you're involved in.
Yeah.
You see everything, but you're good. You all right? You been doing pretty good? You're good. You all right? You been doing pretty good? North Carolina has spuds and spurt.
They did.
Yeah, but they say that. Let's say you really can't tell that I don't think it's true or not, you know?
Yep. I guess I can't look right now. We'll look after this is over with. Let's see.
Yeah.
Cause it's I get a daily report. It's not always super up to date. But it's,
Good.
oh,
Right,
I,
thanks.
I mean,
I got a page. I scrolled down through her. I see what they talk about the tomato for.
hey, Laura, thank you for taking time to join us today. It's good to see you. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. Are we expecting any other visitors from over there on the campus?
I think Schweitzer was going to come on.
I'm here.
Oh, you're there.
There he is. Oh man, it's good looking. I like that. Nice.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Everything okay with you?
So, well, going a little stir crazy, but yeah, I guess so. How about yourself?
Yeah. We're keeping the mental health people busy around here.
Okay.
I'm just trying to stay out of your space, Laura.
We're a few
Well,
minutes after 5, so we'll get underway here. First of all, if I could, I'd like to, I guess the first thing we'll do is the determination of the essential function of government to hold meeting by electronic means. So do I have a motion that the agenda today is an essential function of government?
I will make that motion. This is Freddie Malone.
Motion second by Commissioner Fitzgerald. Any discussion?
Yeah.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye. Our county attorney may tell us we have to do a roll call vote even for that.
That's fine.
Roll call vote. I counted your hands up. I mean, I flipped through. You had all in favor and Ford is absent. Is that correct?
Commissioner Ford is not on with you all, is he, Mayor?
I haven't seen him, Commissioner Wheeler. No, sir. He was not downstairs. There were some sound issues down there, so Mr. Fitzgerald is up here visiting with me.
Commissioner Ford is calling in.
Okay. We'll give him a second to get called in. And be okay with you, Allison, if we call on you to take those roll call votes as we get to
I'm
it.
happy to, Mr. And I'll take, and I see that you have Commissioner Harris by phone. Can you hear me, Commissioner?
Yes.
And if we
Very
call
good.
on you
Thank
to
you.
take those roll call votes as we get. Why don't we go ahead and we'll do the prayer while he's calling in. Commissioner Malone, would you be willing to do that for us? I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to ask anybody ahead of time.
No, that's fine. If this group will join me in prayer. Father, we are grateful for another day of health and life and liberty, both in a great country, but also in a great community, a great county. Just bless our time together, our deliberations, our conversations, honoring and pleasing to you. just help us to do the work of the citizens of the county. In your name, I pray. Amen.
I think we could also probably go ahead and handle the minutes while he's calling in. That's probably him coming in right now. Mr. Ford, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think finally.
Very good. Yes, sir. All we've done so far is the determination that this is an essential function of government to hold the meeting by electronic means in our prayer. So we're ready for approval of minutes. The minutes were in your packet. They're from all the way back in February. Any questions or comments about the minutes, or do we have a motion to approve?
Good. What's going on? No way.
So move, Jim.
Already?
Second.
Commissioner Fitzgerald, do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Malone. Any discussion?
Good deal. Half the price.
Could have a roll call vote, please.
Okay, we're going to go in District Order. Harris,
I'm getting a lot of background noise. I don't know if it's just my phone or if it's everybody's. I can't hardly hear what the motion was even for.
The motion was to approve the minutes. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm yes.
Commissioner Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Commissioner Malone,
Yes.
Commissioner Wheeler,
Yes.
and Commissioner Ford.
Yes.
All right. Our next item would be approval of the agenda. You have the agenda before you as presented by the chair. Is there discussion on that or a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I'm sorry, was there a second?
I second, Jim.
Okay, motion by Malone to approve the agenda, second by Fitzgerald. Any discussion? Roll call for the vote, please.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Commissioner Malone,
Yes.
Commissioner Wheeler,
Yes.
and Commissioner Ford.
Yes.
Okay. Reports is needed. I don't know that we have any reports today. Dan, do you have anything from EMS? Okay. All right. Then we'll move straight into new business. And we appreciate you all being here today to talk about the forensic agreement. We've provided the copy of the agreement to you all as members of the committee. We do have some information that went out to you too about, I believe it's gone out to all of you all about the number of autopsies, which was one of the questions that had been raised last time.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have the part of the packet, but I don't have that information about the number of autopsies.
Okay, and I think we can let the mayor speak to that a little bit from the state standpoint. And I think it wouldn't hurt at all to look at that also from the numbers that we've been provided by EMS in the past, and Director Wheely is here who can speak to that as well. And the mayor is not in his camera view right now. So Dan, do you want to start that? Tell us just a little bit about, and I think I may be able to share that document you sent me. I'm going to pull that up and I'll get that shared. Okay. Dan, we're not hearing you for some reason. Or you're muted there, I guess. No sound.
How about now?
There you go.
Okay, sorry about that. Commissioner Wheeler asked me to provide some information on the responses that EMS, the deaths that EMS responds to with our medical death investigators. So these are field deaths, unattended deaths that were requested to go out to. We started this process back in 2014. So what you have on your screen is the trend since then. So in 2019, for instance, we responded to 391 deaths. Of those 391 deaths, 312 of those were transported for the forensic center for an autopsy or an exam. But those were transported. The ones that weren't transported, the disposition was to let them go via funeral home, directly to the funeral home. The blue line is just the percent of transports to the forensic center as a percentage of the total deaths that we've responded to. Are there any questions specific to that or anything I can explain?
Is it?
Report?
Yeah, I'd like to ask you a question, Dan. Is autopsies up, down, or are they about the same, or as they were last year, or compared?
Yeah, 2020, it's down as far as the number that we transport to the forensic center. We don't always know whether they get an autopsy or it's just an external exam, but the number that we've transported to the forensic center in 2020 is down. About in 19, we're at about 80% of those, and in 2020, we're at 66% to date.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So currently, we're back down to the levels around 2017 and headed toward the levels even in 2016. Correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And then, Mayor, you had stepped out. I had mentioned that you provided some numbers, and I don't know if you want to talk about those. They may even show further change that you want to discuss.
Sorry, we had a diesel spill in the creek, so just one of those little things that happens occasionally. Yeah, let's see. 2016 total deaths. Let's see. Jim, what would you like me to share as far as information? The total autopsies in 16 in the county were 178, and in 17 they were 151, and 18 they were 148, and 19 they were 138. So overall, autopsies are on the decline. As a percentage of total deaths, they're hovering right around the same. In 16, we autopsied about a little over 8% of the deaths. In 2017 and 18, it was around 6.5. We don't know the total deaths for 2019 yet, so wasn't able to calculate that.
Okay. I just thought it would help if we started out with that. That was one of the major issues that were discussed last time with not only members of this committee, but other commissioners. So
right.
I thought that might be a good way to get started today. And I guess, Mayor, is there anything else as far as the ongoing relationship and the new contract that you want to point out before we definitely want to hear from our guests?
Right. So the new contract is exactly, they gave us a 4-year projection with a 2% annual increase, and that's where we are. Last year's, or the 2019 through 2020 contract to date was $279,902, and the proposed contract is $285,500, right at exactly a 2% increase. Of that, roughly $30,000, of course, as you may remember, is for ETSU debt service for that lab that we are still obligated to pay regardless. So the actual, anyway, that's what those numbers look like. I have some other things we can talk about, but I'll just, maybe we can just deal with them in questions or whatever. There is, and I'll just let Dr. Parsons and, maybe Mr. Wheelie, discuss their sort of ongoing discussions about how they may be able to coordinate on a more efficient basis, utilizing less services in general. If you'd like to weigh in on that.
Okay, just to clarify, I'm not a physician, but Dan and I did speak yesterday, and we talked about EMS responding to the scenes as field MDIs, and in order to free up their time, we decided to just, let them know that we can do this job without EMS present on the scene in that capacity.
So Dan, I know that was a concern from EMS in the past, having to do scene investigations and remain there while the forensics team did their work, which obviously took one of your units out of service for all of that amount of time. Is this, or the things that you all are discussing, do they begin to work through some of those issues?
They do. Just my concerns have been not that we mind doing the death investigations or being there, but it's just duplication. If Laura's team can come and do that, they certainly don't need us standing there waiting on them or watching them do their job. So I just felt like either we didn't need to respond to do the death investigations or they didn't, and we've worked through that. So I think that's going to free our guys up. We also talked about the potential of ways to reduce the number that go to the forensic center for an exam when they don't have a physician able to sign the death certificate. And I know she's working with the forensic pathologist about ways to do that maybe they can do that exam on scene and talk with them and then release the body at that point, which would further reduce the time spent transporting these decedents to the forensic center when there's no real necessarily an autopsy ordered, but just for that exam. So I think we're making progress on that. We're just trying to be as efficient as we can of everybody's time. We will do our part, and we'll help them when they need help and they have extenuating circumstances and they need an extra set of hands. We don't mind to do that. We just felt like there wasn't any reason for both of us to be there doing the same job essentially at the same time.
Mr. Chairman, the only other note that I had to from the October meeting was one that was a concern with families that had autopsies performed and they really didn't want them done. We left it where if anybody had that situation or received a call to that effect, that they would notify me. So far, we haven't had that situation, so maybe that's also improved some. So anyway, unless there's other questions or other issues you'd like me to address, I really don't have anything other than the presentation of this contract as a component of the budget.
Before we take questions from commissioners, Ms. Parsons, is there anything else that you want to, or either of you want to talk about before we take questions from commissioners? We appreciate you all being here today, and we also appreciate what's been obvious response to the concerns that were raised last time.
I don't have anything.
Well, let's go to questions then, if commissioners have questions. Commissioner Ford.
Chairman, this is Commissioner.
Oh, yeah, Commissioner Harris, go ahead.
Okay. I guess right off the bat, I would have two questions I would like to ask, and I'm still having a little bit of trouble with my phone. I'm sorry if I cut out or something. I must be in a bad spot. I'm getting a lot of background noise, but I guess number one is why are we looking at an increase this year? And if we're looking at an increase, is other counties looking at the same increase? Would be my first question.
Well, go ahead.
Laura, you want to?
Well, all the counties are getting the same increase. You know, the number of autopsies is going down, but we still accept cases. You know, we are still accepting more cases, and meaning they do external examinations or a record review. And that's still work that needs to be done by our office, not only the investigation component of that, but also the doctor having to review the records, do the external examination, and certify the death.
And I think that just in general,
it would just make sense to me if we're seeing less autopsies, the cost should be coming down instead of going up.
Well, what I'm saying is that the cases are being accepted by the medical examiner. They just may not be choosing to do an autopsy based on they've got significant amount of trauma, which would account for their death. You know, if somebody has extensive head trauma from a motor vehicle collision and there's not any charges pending, then the doctor could do an external examination and still certify the death accurately. So the external examinations, I think we're still having external examinations. So our numbers, the cases that we've accepted are still going up, just their autopsies, the ones that are being autopsied are not.
Yeah, and I'll just, Laura's exactly right on that. The total cases in 16 were 266, in 2017 they were 246. In 2018 they were 241, and in 2019 they were 293. So the number of actual cases that they handle is similar. I think in response to some of the requests from Washington County and the commissioners and so forth, they have focused on examinations where they could and fewer total autopsies performed would be my take on that. I think they've been responsive to what we've asked them to do.
So I guess I'm more confused now. So as the numbers earlier, we had some different numbers if I wrote them down right in the hundreds, and now it's 200. So I don't understand. Are they going down or are they going up?
Well, We have
first set of numbers first set of numbers I gave you were full autopsies. The second set was total cases they have to deal with.
We have been endeavoring to shift from a concept of a center that is driven solely by autopsies to the idea of a medical death investigation system where, you know, we have a number of medical death investigators, a number of forensic pathologists, and the infrastructure to do the whole system. We have a system in place, and naturally on any given year we might have a few more or a few less, but we have the same number of people, and in general in any given year we're also going to have a fixed or slightly increased cost to various supplies and other consumables and things. But we've been working pretty hard, and we went over this big time, I think, last year, about how the cost of this system is not the cost of an autopsy.
And Kent, to answer your question, we have like 3 different types of cases that the jurisdiction belongs to the medical examiner. You can do and their job is to determine the cause and manner of death. They can do that by doing an autopsy, performing an external examination, or reviewing records. Of course, autopsies are for suicides, homicides, when you don't have any documented medical history and a young person passes away. And the external examinations are for the people like traffic fatalities where the trauma is documented, or if they've died in the hospital and the trauma is documented, like old people who fall and fracture their hip, those deaths are still considered accidental deaths. So those cases still need to be accepted by the medical examiner, and the medical examiner still has to certify the death or sign the death certificate. Another case is our record review, where a body we may have caught that it should have been reported to us on a cremation permit, because the medical examiner also reviews all cremations and authorizes cremation for all of Washington County, or all the people who are cremated in Washington County. And so they may have to review the records on somebody that may have been transported to another state to be buried, and we don't have the body anymore. We've had that happen before. So the types of cases that we deal with are not just autopsies. We also do those external examinations and record reviews, and also we certify all cremations for Washington County as well. So like he was saying, the number of autopsies, the lower the 100 numbers that you said, the autopsy rate has actually decreased, but our number of accepted cases has increased. Does that make sense?
It's still there.
I'm sorry, Chairman. Can you still hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
If somebody else has a question, they can go ahead. I do have another question, but I don't want to ask them all, so I don't want to take it up all the time.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I have a question or two I'd like to ask, if it'd be permissible, please.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Commissioner Ford.
I'd like to ask you, the examinations, do they cost the same as the full autopsy, or is it 2 different sets of charges for those? Number one.
It's not per autopsy, it's per capita. So
Doesn't make any difference how many you do. Same
but if you're talking about the time it takes to do those, it's less time.
No, I wasn't talking about the time. I was just talking about the cost. I was just wondering if the examination would cost the same based on as a full autopsy would, or two different set of charges for those.
We don't charge per autopsy or per external examination. It's per capita.
Oh, you just charge per year, right?
Right.
And on the basis of the population of each county that contributes to the system, yes.
And another question I'd like to ask is, out of all these autopsies that's been done the last, say, couple of years, has there been any charges, homicide charges brought forward? Or is it just, are they just settled otherwise?
That's a statistics I can't tell you right off the top of my head. Usually it takes years for a case to go to court. So, you know, we do homicides. They're investigated as homicides. So we do the autopsy.
But I mean, the answer, Laura, surely is yes. I mean, some have been brought forward as homicides.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
We can't tell you how many, but I mean, surely the answer is yes.
Out of all these autopsies I've seen I've heard about in the last year or two, I've heard a lot about those, but I have not heard about any homicides coming forth, charges being placed, coming forth out of that. And I was just asking, just for my general knowledge, if y'all were aware of any of that.
Well, our doctors are continually being deposed by the district attorney's office, so maybe a statistic you could get from the DA's office.
Okay. And another question I wanted to ask is, how is the family, how much input does the family have as to whether they need an autopsy or whether they don't need one? I know y'all make the final decision, but what I want to know, how much input, I'm like Joe, how much input does the family have in this case?
Well, you know, by law, the medical examiner can order an autopsy without the family's consent. However, we do take in consideration if a family is strongly opposed to an autopsy, as we talked about before.
Okay, I want to know how that was being handled this year. Contract, I didn't know. And one more question I want to ask is, what can somebody tell me the cost of an autopsy?
Like the supply and time cost for an autopsy?
I want to know the total cost of an autopsy. When you take somebody in to do an autopsy, what's the cost of one?
Do you mean the cost to Washington County?
Yes. What does it cost to do an autopsy?
We don't charge per autopsy. We charge per capita. So based on the county's population.
But is it not, if you do that, is it not based on each one you do? When you say per capita, is it not based on each one you do your cost?
It's based on each individual in the county. So per capita.
We charge a flat rate of a certain, I forget, it's $1. Well, I don't remember what it is, to be perfectly honest with you, but we charge a certain fixed fee per person, per county. We don't charge per autopsy. So, I mean, and the reason for that is that our services are not restricted to doing autopsies. We do chart reviews and we do external examinations and we review cremation permits and we do all that other stuff. And all that takes time. In aggregate, it might even be more time, I don't know, than it takes to do the autopsies. So, I mean, the way that it winds up in the papers all the time, of course, is that they just take the total amount that you pay and divide the number of autopsies into it. But that discounts all the work that the medical death investigators do at the scene, all the chart reviews, all the subpoenas for all the medical records, all the external examinations and all the rest of that. So you wind up with a much higher of the cost of the autopsy because you're not taking into account all the other services that are rendered that don't reach the level of an autopsy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, but I was just wondering about that, and I'm still not comfortable with not knowing how much it costs us to do the autopsies. But I do thank you for your input, and I want to ask you another question, if I can. If y'all take over the investigation part of on the scene investigation, and the EMS pulls out of it, is that already fitted into your all's contract for this year?
That has been in the contract.
We've already done that.
And we are doing the investigations.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it was already fitted into contract for the year.
It is in the contract, and we have been doing the investigation since 2014 or so.
Okay. I just want to thank you so much for your input.
You're welcome.
And again, if I could just say, what you're paying for is a system. You're not paying for autopsies. You're paying for an entire death investigation system from start to finish.
You're talking about a blanket operation, am I not correct?
Yeah. What? I mean, wouldn't you? I'm sorry. You were breaking up.
I think I got what you're saying. We're paying for a blanket operation from start to finish. We're not just paying for one aspect of it, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And the reason why I think that the emphasis has been on autopsies for so long is that in the beginning, it wasn't a system. There were 8 different medical examiners in 8 different counties, 8 different transport systems, 8 different medical death investigation groups, and one forensic pathologist who did all the autopsies. I think we all remember who that was. And so all he did was provide an autopsy, but that's not the situation any longer. Now we've got a coherent system for all 8 counties, I think, I hope.
Commissioner Fitzgerald, any questions?
I'm fine, Jim.
Commissioner Malone?
I have just a couple, if I may. And I think I want to just clarify what I heard, and maybe the mayor can help. But did I understand basically we're having a 2% increase with this current contract renewal, and then effectively about 2% each year thereafter? Is that what I heard earlier?
Is that right, Laura? I think so.
Yeah.
You're muted, Mayor.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, when we started working with this about 18 months ago, that was one of the issues, is trying to, forecast where these costs were going and to get some sort of a management system around them. And the Forensic Center was, very helpful in giving us essentially a 4-year projection. And this year, with the contract proposal that they presented, they were right on what they had projected 18 months ago.
So, Mr. Chairman, I only have one other question, and I guess this is for both the mayor and our friends at ETSU. But since this is a contract between the county and ETSU, I was hoping we could add a provision that would require Steve Forbes to stay as the basketball coach.
Yeah, I've already written that in, actually.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to. Yeah.
Sure, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't know. We I don't know how we can how we can chain them here. How do you do that? I don't know.
Probably take $2 million, more.
That's probably right. $2 million.
Mr. Chairman, that's all I had.
I think I saw that today. He's gone. Is that right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is gone. That's yeah.
All right, I've got just a couple of questions. First of all, with with both Director Wheelie and the mayor, we saw numbers are going down on the autopsies, and I wanted to ask you all if what is causing that? Is that because of is that a result of conversations we had last year and you all looking at that, or are there other factors that have lowered those numbers? I was pleased to see that, but we'd like to know sort of what's behind that.
Well, we're doing really good death investigations, so we're having more information for the doctor, and they can have additional information available to them readily, so they can look at a case objectively and know if they need to do an autopsy or not. And so I think that has really decreased the number of autopsies, and they've started doing more external examinations. So if they've got like a lot of documented, I think we talked about this last time, if somebody has a lot of documented medical history, but maybe their medications were off count, they've started doing an external examination and maybe just drawing tox to see if the toxicology is positive. If they have a cause of death already without, like if they've got congestive heart failure and coronary artery disease and hypertension and everything like that, but they may have some pills missing, they may not do a full autopsy. They may just do an external exam and draw a tox and see what the tox yields. And they could still certify the death based on their documented medical history. So I think that's one aspect of it.
That's great. That's very good news to hear.
Let me ask a question. Laura is the one that knows the answer to this, not me. So let me ask a question. Is it possible that the drug epidemic has crested a little bit and is perhaps going down?
I think we were talking about that today a little bit, but I mean, I think it's maybe at a plateau, but I don't think it's going to ever go away. I don't think it's ever going to.
Oh, I wouldn't guess that, but I was just wondering, maybe it's a little bit less bad.
Yeah, but I mean, there's so many task force and everything of it now with these drug deaths, and Scott with TBI, my significant other works on a drug task force with TBI, and he sees drugs all the time.
Yeah, okay.
All the time. It's just rampant. So I don't think it's gonna go away. Hopefully it will decrease, but I don't know if we necessarily have seen a significant decrease in that.
I'm gonna share the screen again, and I can't see what it's showing. So yeah, I don't know if you can see where I'm pointing with the mouse. Okay, Commissioner Malone, thank you. I want to be able to explain these numbers if I'm presenting this, assuming there's a motion to approve this and we're moving forward to the full commission, I could very well get questions on this and want to be able to answer those. So if I look at Sullivan County and I see total autopsies and views, you've got 140 autopsies, 2 views, 142. And if I look at the Washington County numbers, there's 138, and I can't read that number, but I believe it's 198. It's a significantly higher number than
it's like 150 something.
155.
155. And then, and I knew I could read it earlier, but I can't. Well, I may have seen it in another form, but and then total cases 293. What is the difference in Sullivan County and Washington County as far as that number of views?
Yeah.
I think I know, is it because they have their own? Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'll let you answer that.
They have their own medical examiner in the county. So Dr. Hudson, he'll either view the body himself and certify the death, which is still work that he's doing, or he'll send us a body and we do, because we still investigate every county death in conjunction with law enforcement. We contact the families for every county. So we're not just working for Washington County, we're working for all the counties doing that. So our investigators may discover that they don't have, they have so much medical history documented that may not have been caught on the front end or something. And our doctors will talk to Dr. Hudson and he will agree to just do an external examination. Or if it's a traffic, instead with a single vehicle traffic accident and they've got significant head trauma, then we may call Dr. Hudson and say, hey, would it be all right with you since there's no charges in this, if we just go ahead and do an external exam, and he's in agreement with that, and he'll modify his order for autopsy to be an order for an external examination. So, but he's still doing the views and signing out death certificates in his county. It's just not reflected as work that we do. Do you see what I'm saying?
Okay, and then like on some of these other counties where are there, I think if I remember right, there are other counties where you all would be doing the views.
Well, because Dr. Schmidt is the medical examiner for Washington, Carter, Unicoi, and Johnson County. So we do the views for those. We also have a very good relationship with Dr. Berry, who's the medical examiner in Greene County, and Dr. Daliavi, who's the medical examiner in Hawkins County. They frequently consult our physicians for advice on how to certify a death. And then we can have conversations with them and say, you know, we feel like an external exam is warranted rather than doing an autopsy in this case.
Okay. And with my next question, I want to make sure you understand, I think our percentage wins. I'm not complaining about our percentage, but I just want to be able to explain the difference. But on the ones where you all are the medical examiner, where that percentage of views would be so much lower than the percentage of autopsies, what's the difference there? I'm glad we are getting more views. I'm not complaining about that, but I want to be able to explain that difference.
Well, the cases have to be accepted. If they meet medical examiner criteria, they have to be accepted. Whether or not an autopsy is warranted is really at the discretion of the medical examiner assigned to the case.
Okay.
I guess with the Carter County, I mean, the population is lower. Is that what you're asking me? So,
well, like for instance, you got 56 autopsies in Carter County and only 9 views.
Right.
The percentage of views is much lower in Carter County than us. Again, I don't think that's a bad thing, but I'm wondering what the difference.
The reason it's a difference is because Washington County has a trauma center. So all of the bodies that have hip fractures or, you know, they've had traumatic a subdural because of a fall or whatever, they're getting transported to Washington County. And they're dying there, and where they die is the jurisdiction of the medical examiner. So our doctors have to certify those deaths as well.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, it's due to JCMC basically.
And then, and I'm going to unshare the screen for a minute. Or maybe I think that's it on sharing screen, but the only other question that I wanted to ask is, we heard the mayor mentioned that we haven't had any situations where he's had to be contacted about a family not upset with having an autopsy. When we talked about that last time, you all were going to put processes in place to do that if somebody did object. At what point does that happen? Do you have a procedure? At what point would the mayor be called if a family was objecting?
Well, we haven't, like Mayor Grandy said, we haven't had any instances of that here at the Forensic Center. But our investigators will talk to, prior to the autopsy, before the autopsy even begins, regardless if our investigators go to the scene or not, we're always contacting the family on the front end, letting them know that we're involved, the level of examination that the doctor is going to perform. And at that point, they can express their objections. We haven't had a family member express their objections at that point, but if we could not resolve it by our procedure in-house, you know, then we could at that point contact the mayor and let him know of the situation. But usually, you know, in the past when we've had families object, we have them sign a waiver form, you know, that we could have them, you know, sign and just, you know, the doctor would agree not to do an autopsy, but an external exam.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions?
Chairman, this is Commissioner Harris.
Yes, sir.
I do have a few more questions. If everybody else asked theirs, I know I've already asked some, so I don't want to jump in until everybody gets done.
I believe it's your turn again. Go right ahead.
Okay. This should be a simple question. I think this goes back to what Commissioner Ford asked. If an individual wanted to come in and pay for an autopsy for some reason, what would the cost of an autopsy be?
$3,500 is what we would.
$3,500. Okay. I was sort of confused about another. I think that your director made this statement that you all done the complete death investigation system. But yet, when the question was asked how many criminal cases were made out of these autopsies, we didn't know the answer. So, can you explain that to me? Why you would, if you do the complete death investigation, why you wouldn't know how many cases were made out of those autopsies?
Yeah, that's a statistic you have to get from the district attorney's office. We are separate from law enforcement.
This seems like still like a high number to me, just knowing what cases are made. I guess my next question would be.
Our function is not just for homicides. We have to certify accident, suicide, undetermined, homicide, and natural deaths even. So that's in the scope of the medical examiner's duty. So we're just not here. It's a big part of what we do here, homicides, but that's not the only role we have.
I understand that, but when he said that it was a complete death investigation system, it would just make me think that would be an easily readable number.
No,
if that's the case.
What we're charged with doing is accurate death categorization as regards manner and mechanism. It's the legal system's job to figure out whether laws have been broken. The forensic pathologist can call something a homicide, which just means that the actions of someone else led to a death. But that doesn't mean that the legal system necessarily is going to get involved. A homicide is just where the actions of somebody else leads to a death.
Yeah, and most people around here plea, so.
Yeah. When you talk about having to do these views, what would be the purpose of having to go to the hospital and view somebody that's passed away at the hospital if they're being attended by a physician?
Because their manner of death is not natural, and a physician in Tennessee cannot certify a death that's not natural, or a manner of death that's not natural.
Okay. A lot of stuff's changed, I guess, since I used to work in law enforcement, because that's not the way I remember it, but I know a lot of laws changed at one point. But what would be your all's opinion of Washington County having our own medical examiner?
We do have a medical examiner, Dr. Schmidt.
Well, I'm talking about a medical examiner just for Washington County.
Well, for name accreditation, our center has to have a medical examiner in the county that we're serving. And a medical examiner should be a forensic pathologist, in my opinion.
I'm just talking about, like you mentioned, Sullivan County and Greene County and Hawkins County, is that right? They all have their own medical examiner.
Yeah, but like I pointed out, he's still doing the same amount of work in the county, and they all pay them additional fee, and they still have to pay the forensic center to do the job per capita.
And if my figures are right, I guess we're looking over a 4-year period of about a 8% increase. It's 2% a year. So again, I don't understand why it's going up when numbers are hopefully coming down.
Again, our actual accepted cases are going up, It's just the number of autopsies that are going down. And cost of living is always increasing.
I think this is a technical field. I mean, I don't know. I can't often see why things are going up myself, but fact of the matter is they do go up in price.
Okay, I think that's all I have. I really appreciate you answering my questions, and I hope you all stay safe during all this time.
You too.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask one more question. And I don't know who it needs to go to, where it needs to go to the mayor, you, or who, but I'd like to know, with the 2% increase, how much the total cost will be for that this year, projected?
I can answer that. It's $285,500.16. That's an increase over last year of $5,598.12.
Which that encompasses 2% shit the lady was talking about, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mayor, anything else you want us to take into consideration?
No, sir. I think we've covered most of this.
All right.
Chairman Miller, can I ask one more thing? I guess this would be to you.
Yes, sir.
When is our medical examiner's contract up? Does it coincide with this contract, or is it separate?
It's my understanding, Mayor, you correct me if I'm wrong, that we have an interim we're in a situation right now where we have an interim medical examiner. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And I'd forgotten one question that, if you don't mind, Commissioner Harris, I'll ask that might help clear up that a little bit. I'd wondered if we make that appointment, I know that it's statutory for a certain number of years for the medical examiner. And Mayor, would it make sense to have this contract run with that? Is it a 2-year contract or
my recollection, Jim, is that it's 5, and it really doesn't, and it doesn't really seem to ever sync up with a contract renewal for the forensic center. At least it hasn't in the past. So we are, there's a. So I don't really know the answer to that. We could research that a little bit, perhaps.
To me, and I'll direct this to our ETSU guest, it would make this cleaner for you all, it would appear to me, if the contract ran the same as the term for the medical examiner, so that the appointment of the medical examiner would take place at the same time, be covered all the whole time during that contract, and you wouldn't have a contract coming up in the middle of I think that's why there's been some reluctance to discuss appointing a permanent medical examiner until we could resolve this contract. But you just have it all in one fell swoop at that point, if that's something that you all would consider. And I'm sorry, I don't know how long the term of this contract is for.
This contract is a 12-month contract. My recollection of the statute that governs the medical examiner, it's a 5-year term. And I think that since we have been working with the Forensic Center on this, we've not actually had one forensic pathologist at the Forensic Center serve a complete 5-year term. That's the reason for the interim. When the new forensic pathologist comes in, they take over our medical examiner role on a interim basis because they are fulfilling the original 5-year term that was established. So that's how that's a little bit off sync. So this contract is not statutory, but the medical examiner appointment for the county is. And it seems to me under the terms of this as well that in Washington County, because of the location of the forensic center, the ME for Washington County has to be a forensic pathologist. And so it's just made really the most sense to use the one that's there on site. Forensic pathologist, I think most centers have had a chance to talk to other centers in the state and including ours. And there's a shortage of them. There are more positions than each year's graduating class of forensic pathologists. So they're becoming more difficult to get. If I recall, our center here still has an opening for a forensic pathologist.
That's correct. There was a large article in the New York Times about, I'm thinking 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks ago. There are maybe 500 forensic pathologists in the country. There are 10,000 dermatologists.
Commissioner Harris, you were asking some questions along this line too. You may want to follow up.
When is our current contract with this interim medical examiner? When does that come up in front of the commission?
Is it my understanding that's part of this contract, Mayor? Is there appointment of the interim separate from that?
It seems to me the contract stipulates using the forensic pathologist at the university.
And Mr. Chairman, why again would we have to have a forensic pathologist to be our medical examiner when other counties are not required to? Is there a specific statute regarding Washington County on that?
We have to retain our name accreditation. And if we don't have a forensic pathologist serving as a medical examiner in the county we're seated, or at least one county, so we would lose our accreditation. And Tennessee law states that if you're not name accredited, you can't perform autopsies in the state of Tennessee.
For us, the medical examiner comes at no additional charge with this service that the Forensic Center provides, where we pay on a per capita basis. Every county pays the same amount of money based on their per capita based on their population. So Sullivan County, for example, has their own independent medical examiner that they pay in addition to the per capita charge, same as we just get our ME included in the cost of the service.
Mr. Malone, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, just to clarify that point, because there was some discussion, or the question of thinking about getting our own medical examiner, but in Sullivan County, they are paying the same cost we're paying to and I'm asking this as a question to clarify, but it sounds like Sullivan County is paying the exact same cost we're paying to the Forensic Center. And then on top of that, they have chosen to pay extra to have their own medical examiner. Is that my understanding?
That's true. They pay
exactly
more.
Correct.
Yeah, they pay actually more because they have a bigger population too.
So
that is correct. Your understanding is correct.
Thank you. So, the thought of Washington County additionally having a medical examiner we would still have to use the services of the Forensic Center for autopsies, I guess, unless we ship them to Knoxville, which doesn't sound friendly to the families. So from a budgetary standpoint, it sounds like this is the better option.
In more ways than one, but that's one way.
Thank you.
Mr. Harris, anything further?
So that's all I have. Thank you, Chairman.
Commissioner Ford, anything else?
No, sir. I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Just a comment in response to what Commissioner Malone was saying. I understand what you're saying and agree with that. I think some of the issues that we were having, to me, were as important as the budget issues, but I think we've seen those begin to be addressed. I really appreciate you all working with EMS. I think some of the time and cost that we were seeing there was a big concern for a lot of us because we fund EMS. And I appreciate what you're doing there, and I really appreciate what you've done to in response to what we began to talk about last year, and just further developing your program in general that has resulted in addressing those concerns as well. So I'd just say that. If there's nothing else from the commission or commissioners on the committee, do we have a motion with respect to the contract that's been presented to us?
I will make the motion that we move it forward to budget.
Have a motion to move it forward to budget from Commissioner Malone. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Fitzgerald. Any further discussion?
One more question before I vote on this, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Have other counties already agreed to this increase, or are we the first one that they've approached with this?
Not certain, but it was sent to us from the First Tennessee Development District, and my expectation is that they sent it to all counties at the same time.
But we don't know if any other counties approved this yet.
I haven't talked to anyone about it.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Parsons, do you know if anybody else has taken it up yet?
I haven't heard anything yet. No, sir.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, we'll call for the vote. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
All right, commissioners. Commissioner Harris,
No.
Commissioner Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Commissioner Malone,
Yes.
Commissioner Wheeler,
Yes.
and Commissioner Ford.
No.
So that's 3 yes and 2 no's.
The motion passes. All right. That's all we have on our agenda today. We thank you all for being here with us. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mr. Ford moves to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Malone. And again, because we're required to roll call vote, could we please have a final roll call vote?
All right, in district order, Commissioner Harris.
Yes.
And Commissioner Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Commissioner Malone,
Yes.
Commissioner Wheeler,
Yes.
and Commissioner Ford.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's
We stand
5 and
adjourned. Thank you.
You all.